She is focused.
Okay, we'll reconvene into open session here for the Amery School Board. And in Chelsea's absence, I'm going to run the meeting. Chelsea's father passed away, and we would like to extend our condolences to Chelsea and her family over this loss. And our thoughts and prayers are with her and the family. First up is consent agenda items, and I would like to make a motion to change the agenda to move Lisa Voisin's information presentation on district finance up to right after community comments. She has some traveling to do tonight. So is there a second for that motion?
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask for discussion. I'll remember that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we got that. And now consent agenda items were...
Yes, I looked over the board vouchers, and I make a motion to approve the board vouchers for to July.
all...
And the rest of the consent.
Yeah.
Yes, and the rest of the consent agenda items.
Okay, is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Negative? No? Okay, so we're past there. And any community comments? Did anybody sign up, Brian? Nope. So we'll move right to you, Lisa.
This is my podium.
That's yours.
Here you get mine. There.
Make sure the mic is on.
All good.
All right.
Test 1, 2, go Packers.
Absolutely.
Works.
We
Okay.
heard that for sure.
Oh, I got to be careful. I'm this side of the state. You just never know, right? I think I was here. I was here exactly 2 years ago, kind of talking about some of the same things. So I'm going to take the next maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to review some of the great things that we've done for the district financially in preparation, or just basically trying to manage taxes and manage tax levy. And so I'm just going to go right into, and I think this little clicker thing will get me to where I want to be, but.
Oh, I'll go ahead and.
Okay, perfect. Maybe that is going to work.
Just let me
Okay.
know.
So we're going to start out with my favorite slide, which is really talking a little bit about the tax levy, how the district sets the tax levy. And I think this is important because we're going to go into a couple more slides that are going to go maybe into a little bit more detail. And just to understand, there's really three components of a tax levy. There's the revenue limit component, which is the left-hand side. That right now is about $8.5 million actually for last year, 17-18. The revenue limit is determined by the state. So the school board really has no control over what that number is, because the state complex revenue limit formula pretty much determines what you're going to levy a tax for. And that's why I always put the red box around it, because it's limited. The only way to make that bigger, that portion of the tax levy bigger, is to do what you did last April, which was to go to the community and ask taxpayers, can we levy more funds to operate? And that's for the $1.9 million. You did that. So you made that box bigger, or that number larger, by asking the voters. But otherwise, it's limited based on a formula. So we have very little control over that section of your tax levy, which, as you can see, is the largest portion of your tax levy. The other two pieces are referendum debt, which is principal and interest payments on a loan that you as voters approved years ago for a building project. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then community service, a small portion of your levy that really goes to your facility use for community use purposes. So not a very large portion of your tax levy, but separate nonetheless. So understanding that there's really those three components. And then the next question is, how does that come down to my tax bill? What does that mean to me in taxes? You can say, our total tax levy is $9.7 million, but what I really want to know is, how does that equate to my tax bill? And there's really a very simple formula. You just take that total $9.7 million tax levy and you divide it by all the property value in the school. And you come up with, on a per thousand basis, what's called a mill rate. And you hear mill rate all the time. The easy way to equate that to your taxes is to take that mill rate, in last year it was $11.14, just move the decimal over 2. So if you move the decimal over 2, you've got a tax amount of $1,114 on a $100,000 property. Again, it's estimated because we've talked in depth just recently about how each municipality assesses different. But in general, a basic guideline is to say your mill rate is $11.14, And if you equate that to a $100,000 home, just move the decimal over 2, and taxes are $1,114 for the school portion of your tax bill. You know, there's city, village, town, county, tech college, all those pieces of your tax bill. But the school portion is the $1,114. So if you take that mill rate and just divide on the next slide into the 3 components, your mill rate for revenue limit, $9.73, your mill rate for community service, 12 cents, your mill rate for referendum, $1.29. I guess the takeaway from here is that I typically see mill rate for debt to be about a 25% of your total mill rate, so you're well under that. Usually it's between, I don't know, maybe 15 and 20, 25%, somewhere in that range. A typical school district will have debt in that amount. So again, just breaking the mill rate into those 3 components. I always like to talk about that tax base portion of that formula. So you're taking the levy, dividing by all the property value in the school, but how is that growing? What are we projecting for growth? What is happening with that total value? What are your home value or property values doing? So this is just looking back 10 years to see kind of what has happened with your property values. And not surprisingly, you've seen a little bit of a drop. This picture is very similar across the state. But you've had a couple of years of very, very good growth in the district, which is good for you. So you had, I think we're estimating right in that 6% range. Was that the number? Possibly this fall. Last year it was 3.5. The year before it was 4. Over state average. So your property values are growing more than the state average. I think that's a good thing to know. And it might be because new businesses, new homes, new development is coming into your district. It might just be that the value of property is going up as well. But that's an important factor for me because when I'm doing projections, I want to look at how you've grown in the past. I want to spend a little time on this next slide, and I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but it's really important because this is really your story. This is your story. So if you look to the left of this line, that's all actual numbers. Those are mill rates. We just talked about mill rate. So in the first year, 13-14, I'm just looking back 5 years, your mill rate was $11.94. What is that on a $100,000 home? $1,194, right? Move the decimal over 2. So your total taxes have come down. The story here is that you've held the line in taxes. Good job, school board. And the tax mill rate has gone down over the 5 years. So I think that's one takeaway from this slide. And how we've been able to do that is we've been able to manage your tax levy. So you can see there's different colors in this bar chart. The black is that revenue limit we just talked about. So that's that big portion of your taxes, the revenue limit. That's the unknown. We just don't know what that's going to be in the future. And as you can see to the right of the line, I just kept it flat because I honestly don't know what the state budget's going to show for the next biennium. But we're making the assumption that's staying flat. And then those other pieces, the gray is debt, your principal and interest payments on debt. So what's the takeaway there? The takeaway is that 2 more years. 2 more years of debt. That gray box goes away after 2 years. So you've got 18-19 and you've got 19-20, and then that goes away. The green is your energy efficiency. You've been doing some tax levying for projects for energy efficiency to save operational dollars. Great job, board, for making that decision to move forward with the green bars. Again, energy efficiency projects, so we were levying a tax for that. And the blue, you're going to see a little bit of a blue box in 16-17. Right there. We actually prepaid debt. We levied a little bit more to prepay some debt. Great job. Saved some money for the taxpayers, and we're able to keep that mill rate on a kind of a level to downward trend. So again, all of this is planning. That tan box is the referendum, the $1.9 million that you voters approved. And again, we were able to fit that $1.9 million in because we knew your debt payments were dropping. That gray box dropped significantly last year. Your debt payments dropped. And again, 2 years left. So I'm proud of this. You guys should be very proud of this. We've been planning, and now we're at a point where it's almost time to start thinking about the next step. What is the next step? Because in the future, you're going to see, once that debt goes away, the 2 years of debt payments, taxes could drop up to, I always get asked this question, so I put it on there, $145 on a $100,000 home. So your mill rate could drop $1.45 after that debt goes away. Do you want that to happen, board and community, or do we want to start thinking about and planning for what we might be able to either fill that in or allow for maybe a smaller drop? There's all kinds of options that we can consider and look at, but it's something that I think we need to start thinking about and start planning for. Does that make sense? So again, to the right of that vertical line is projected future. That's why I don't have any mill rates attached, because I don't really 100% know what those will look like. And then to the left is your actual. Any questions on that? So typically the next question is what can we fill that in with? So that's the next slide. So it's exactly what you just saw, but I added an orange that says, well, what could we fill? What could we do without increasing the mill rate? What could we do? You could go to referendum. Actually, the only way to really increase that or fill that in would be with a referendum. So there's really two choices. One is an operational referendum, which you just passed, so it's likely not going to be needed then. And the other option would be a facilities referendum. And if you, again, right now I've got an estimated borrowing of $16.5 million worth of projects you could complete without an increase. And again, estimated because it's 2 years down the road. I don't know where interest rates are going to be. There's a lot of what ifs, but just to give you an idea of what kind of projects you could get done without an increase in taxes. I think that's key.
And length of that borrowing would be?
It's a good question. Statutorily, you can only go 20 years. Okay. So this might be, I have the details, but it might be a two-phase borrowing, but 20 years essentially.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so keep that. I think that's a good number to kind of keep in the back of your mind, knowing that can fluctuate and change, but right now that's what we're looking at. And we'll be updating that as we get more information. Okay, so the next couple of slides are just more informational only. I always like to share with boards, especially if there's some new board members. I was on the school board in Muskego, so it's like a suburban Milwaukee district, and so I know what it's like to be cornered in the grocery store with questions, and they'll ask you we just went to referendum. So having the facts in front of you and knowing the facts about when did you go, what did you ask for, how much, and now we know what it did to taxes. So that last time you went was April of 17 for the $1.9 million, and it did not increase the mill rate. I think that's a safe kind of story to that last referendum. But the time before that, it was 10 years earlier. So 10 years earlier, you had gone for a recurring, again, to exceed the revenue limit, that left side with that red box. You had already asked the taxpayers. I see that all the time. People sometimes think that recurring question is permanent. It's a permanent fix. And as we can see here, it wasn't. You went 10 years ago, and then you had to come back, 10 years later. And then you had a small facility referendum. I remember that $2 million. Can't recall what that financed.
7 was that?
Any historians know what that $2 million? Was it like a maintenance referendum?
I think it was bus garage. Is that when that was?
No, I'm trying to think.
High school auditorium.
I think it was maintenance.
I feel like it was maintenance.
Roofs and
I'll look it up.
Because there's been nothing.
I'll look it up. I'm sure I have the data on it. And then you had an 05, and then in 01 you had a much larger borrowing, $12.9 million, maybe this facility. Yeah. Yeah. I just have to smile because now you would never be able to pay for a facility like this with $12.9 million. So great job. A little bit on the interest rate charts. This chart actually goes back to when I started at Baird in 1988. I started when I was 10. And it's interest rates. So when I started at Baird, schools were borrowing at like 7 and 8%, and now we just did a school district borrowing the other day for 3.5%. So interest rates are much lower than they were, back in the day. Are they at all-time lows? No. They've spiked up a little bit. You can see the spike here. It's right after Trump got elected. Municipal bond interest rates spiked almost a full percentage point. And then I just kind of charted on here some of the debt issues that we've done for you. For this district in 97, 01, and 07, those 3 borrowings all were issued, much at much higher rates than we are today. So if you were looking at a facility referendum in the near future, you would definitely, realize some good low interest rates.
Yeah.
Don't know where they're going to be 2 years down the road, but they're low now.
Yeah. But we refinanced a bunch
Yep.
of that.
Yep.
With you.
You did. We did. And we saved, I wish I had the stats on that. I don't have the stats,
man.
but we saved quite a bit from refinancing.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up. Another, I think, good point from a financial perspective for a school board to understand is what your bond rating is. And so every time you go to borrow and you issue debt through bonds, we will get a bond rating. It's kind of like a credit rating from, you had yours done from Moody's. There's also Standard & Poor's. And Moody's assigned a AA3 bond rating, which is a really strong rating for a district your size. To be in the AA category is a huge positive. And I'm sure they've come back and done some surveillance ratings. Yeah, June of 18. So just recently they came back and did a surveillance review of your finances, and you're still at the AA3. So good job maintaining the finances. AA3, it goes AA3 to AA2, AA1, and then AAA. So there's only 3 categories above Amery School District. So be proud of that. That's a great bond rating. And what that does for you is every time you go to borrow, so again, the $16.5 million, if you find projects 2 years down the road, we want to make sure we're maintaining this bond rating. We're doing everything we can to keep that AA3 because that will keep the interest rates lower. The better, the higher the bond rating, the lower the interest rate. So again, great job. You're at your adequate. Some of the factors they looked at: adequate financial position, so your fund balance. It's right in that 16-17% range. I mean, it would be great if it was higher, but I think that's a good, solid fund balance. So great job. You added some this year, and then you added some to Fund 46. I think that was a really good plan. We talked about maybe next year keeping it all in fund balance, just knowing that we might have a bond rating in the future. You have a good mid-range size pension liability and average wealth and income. Modestly sized tax base, that have total property value they look at. So they look at a lot of economic factors, and there's a lot that goes into the bond rating. But I always like to look at what you have control over, which is really that fund balance, the district finances, and how well managed the district is, which you're very well managed. So good job.
When you're talking about, your rating and that, so what would be like your interest rate change from a AA3 to
AA2?
Yeah.
So AA3 to a AA2 is probably about what I would say 10 basis points or 0.1%. So if you were borrowing at a 4%, if you had a AA2, you'd be at a 3.9%. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest cost.
Yeah.
When you're talking about $16.5 million or even $10 million, it's 100, and we'll quantify that for you. To get to the AA2, I don't think that's going to happen just based on your tax base size. You don't have any control over how large your the value of the property is in the district. When you look at the AA2 districts, you're looking at like the suburban Madison, suburban Milwaukee, larger tax base, larger value in property, which again is out of your control. So I think
then if we borrow the 16.5, does that affect our financial picture enough to give us a different rating?
We're going to do our best between now and then to make sure you get the best bond rating. I don't think you're going to, I think even with the 16.5, I think you'll stay at the AA3. I want to be optimistic though. So we'll review it. There's also the opportunity to go to Standard & Poor's, which from a lender standpoint, the investors don't care if you're Standard & Poor's or Moody's. So I've been on, I think, like 3,000 rating calls. So I know what Standard & Poor's is going to ask. So I'll look at that as well. But yeah, if we move into that direction, we'll start gearing up for, what are some of those factors? What can we get in place now that will help you later when you're getting a bond rating? Because again, 10 basis points is a lot of taxpayer dollars. So
You
good.
had mentioned there's 3 ratings above ours right now. How many are below ours?
Well, in Wisconsin, you're not going to see anything in the B category. Okay, so let's just say the A's. So when you get to AA3, which is where you are, then you're going to go in the A category, which most districts your size are in. And it's A1, A2, and A3. So there's 3 below you.
All right. So we're
Then you get-
basically right in the middle.
Basically, but you're in the AA category, which really is good. And then you get into the B's, and then you're in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I'm not even kidding. Oh, I hope I didn't offend anyone. No, there are very few. If there's one school district in Wisconsin that's a B, I know Monroe dropped into that category, but they're back up again. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. A little bit of statistics again, board members, it's good for you to know that since 2010, 73% of Wisconsin school districts have gone to referendum. So this is my "you're not alone" slide. If this is the route you go, know that there's a lot of districts that have gone for operating. I think I just had my intern email me. He just sent me an email today and said since 1995, like 82% of the districts in the state have gone for an operating question. So that's a lot of districts. Since revenue limits pretty much were put into place, 82% have already gone for asking their community for more funds. I thought it was a good stat. And then this year, you can see the stats on this year, all the different questions that have gone. We've had actually record passing rate this year. We had 82% pass for the deck questions in April, which is a record. I've never seen that many deck questions pass. So I think it's a sign of a better economy. Last slide is just timing. So we're just talking about the legislation right now that just came out this year. I think it was Act 59 said that you can only go to referendum on a primary or a general date. You could, back in the day, we used to be able to go on a special election. We could pick any day of the year. I've gone Saturdays. Any day of the year, we used to be able to go to referendum. Now it is required that you pick either a primary or a general. In 2019, next year, it's an odd year, so there's no fall elections, which really moves us to 2020 for you guys to either look at a February, April. I would not go in August. No one is around to vote. So I look at it as February, April, or November in 2020 are really your 3. Usually I have them circled. I don't have them circled. But February, April, and November are the 3 opportunities for you. And standing here right now, knowing what you have in place already, I think you could pick any one of those dates, and I think you would as long as you take the right steps and get the community involved, I think you'd have some good success. So I don't think we're late, and I don't think we're early. I think we're just right on time to have this discussion. The one legal requirement is that you have to have a resolution adopted 70 days in advance. So we are coming up to the deadline for November right now. The districts that are going in November, actually tonight is the big night. They're adopting the resolution. The resolution just says, how much, the not to exceed amount that they're going to be borrowing and for what purpose. And we can talk about that detail later. That's not important, but just so you know that you got to back it up 70 days, and really at that point you have to decide what you're doing. So next steps for you, I think, I say solidified team, but I think you have a really good team in place with Krause Anderson and this administrative team and you and the community and Baird. I know you already have a facility study, a very good one that you've had done from Krause Anderson that has a lot of information. That may need some updating. I don't know how old it is. Again, I said it before and I'll say it again, to get your community involved, to create a community group is very important, and you guys did a great job doing that last go around. And finally, I think most importantly is really to gear up for a possible community survey based on what your needs are. Now, you've talked about all different kinds of needs, from early childhood, elementary space, maintenance, all those kinds of things. So when you get those kind of a good feel for what those are, to have a survey done by a professional survey team, whether it's School Perceptions or a different survey company, I think that we're actually doing them right now for April. So a year from now would be a good time to have one almost completed. We're almost complete with our April referendum surveys. So again, that survey really helps you, especially when you have a variety of different kind of needs, to really hone in on what is the community going to support. And if you follow that survey, I mean, we've had very, very good success if you follow it. Sometimes it doesn't tell you what you want it to tell you, but you got to follow it. So, is there anything else, Jim, that I missed, or Andrew? Anything you can think of to highlight?
I think you could maybe just mention financially, you said the district's in very good shape. We did increase the fund balance this year, which should be a benefit. We'll look to do that in the next couple of years as well. But can you talk a little about that 16-17% fund balance, your views on it, which is an open...
Everybody always asks me, what do you think our fund balance should be? I think 16 and 17 cents is on the low end for a AA3. I'm just going to say that. But it's solid. It's a good solid, because you have to think about too, what is your total budget? Is it 20 million? I mean, it's the higher your total budget, the harder it is to get that percentage any higher. So again, I think a 16-17 is good. I don't think it hurts to build that a little bit more. Ideally, when I was in Muskego, I mean, we built our fund balance so that we didn't have to cash flow borrow. Do you guys know about cash flow borrowing? Because your revenues only come in a few times a year and you got to pay payroll every 2 weeks. You get to a point where it's like, well, you're waiting for your aid payment or your taxes. They're not coming, so you have to borrow because you don't have enough fund balance to cover you. So if you could get to a point where you wouldn't have to cash flow borrow, I think that would be ideal. I don't know what that is. At some point we can sit down and figure that out. Can't be too much more, but yeah. So good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. Thanks for coming, Lisa.
Oh, no problem.
All right, and that's done. So then next we'll go to administrator reports.
Okay, just wanted to mention that today was the new teacher in service. We have 10 new teachers, and the only two things I wanted to mention is this is in-service week. All employees will be back tomorrow and Wednesday for our district in-service. And then the other point is our child care program. We seem to be turning away students every week. There was a group of triplets a week ago that we had to turn away because they are full through next June. So the classrooms have certain ratios that are required by law, and we're out of space in the elementary. We've added a pre-K teacher and teacher aide. Our numbers are looking like they're going up, and it's a concern that we have when we have to turn students away. So it's a good thing. We're starting our 4th year with the Clubhouse Child Care Program, and it's very popular. Other administrators?
Batting leadoff for the school year 18-19 after we get rolling with school is homecoming. Our homecoming week is the week of September 10th. Yes, that is the same week as fall festival, so there will be no shortage of activities for all of you to engage in. There's lots going on at that time. Our kids will be running ragged by the end of the week, I imagine. We finish off the week with a game against Osceola, and then the dance that follows. So it'll be an exciting time. It's early in the year based on the way the football schedule works out. We clearly couldn't do it the first game because we weren't in school yet. And one of our games is in the middle of October, and per Mr. Boyd's request, he would rather not play instruments when it's 35 degrees and sleeting out. So we chose September 14th.
Are you weather forecasting?
I'm thinking it's not going to be like it was on Friday evening, is what I'm saying. So, the week of September 10th.
I know Jim had mentioned everything that's happening, when we're real excited to return staff, and tomorrow, and it was great to meet all the new teachers today and go through training, and obviously students next week. Middle school has open house for 7th and 8th grade and orientation for 6th grade tomorrow night, starting at 4:30, and we're pretty excited about that. And we'll be going over not only just back to school paperwork and expectations, locker tryout, meet all your teachers. 7th and 8th graders will be picking up their computers. 6th grade students will also have a presentation about one-to-one technology and the expectations that go with that and how all that works. So that's tomorrow. We're excited about that. And really the only other thing that I would maybe mention that is going to come up in between this meeting and our next meeting is our September 11th program. Our September 11th Memorial Program is something that we have done from the year after that tragic event. It's a pretty nice event. It's sponsored between Ms. Schock and I. Kids ages 3rd through 8th grade are at it. A lot of community members, and we would like to invite people out, and I believe it starts at 8:30 on September 11th. And we'll put more information out on our OneNote program. And I think it's a really nice event because not only are we honoring all the different service members that passed away on that event, but it's really, too, to show their appreciation to our current first responders, police officers, firefighters, and our service members, including VFW and American Legion. They're all participating. It's a pretty nice event, and would want to include anyone that would like to come.
I would just add that open house for the intermediate school is on Wednesday night from 3:30 to 5, and AIM orientation is 6 to 7:30. Same night, Wednesday night.
I would like to thank you for hiring another 4K teacher. Last year in the spring, we were at 92 students. Today, we are at 114, up 22 students. So it's a really beautiful thing, but thank you for allowing us to move forward with that. This evening, or all day today, we've had Montessori parent-teacher conferences for our 4K students in Montessori, and our meet and greet which is our open house, is Wednesday from 3 o'clock to 4:30. We are in the middle of a beautiful construction project at the elementary school, and it really is beautiful. It's a testimony to our community, and because it's amazing. But the lobby is in full construction. So today, George, our supervisor, maintenance supervisor, and the general contractor of the project, and I decided that we are going to move forward with the meet and greets. However, the lobby will be off limits, so we're going to kind of tape that all off. So families will be able to come in both ends of the building, the north and the south, and get around, but they won't be able to go through the lobby. We made that decision because we didn't want to halt construction from moving forward. So I think it's going to be it's going to be just fine. It's very beautiful. We have 4K conferences next week. So today is Montessori, and next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is our 4K conferences. And students K1 and 2 begin next Monday, and our 4K friends come in on Thursday. So we're excited for another year. Thank you.
It's a little feet coming in. That's good. Anything else? Brad?
Pupil services update first. We had a team of members go to the trauma-sensitive schools project in Wisconsin Dells. We had student success coordinators, counselors, school psychologists, and administrators associated with that grant. And they completed, or we completed, a draft action plan for some coming work throughout this year and into the foreseeable future associated with training staff and developing an action plan and goals around trauma-sensitive practices, just to reach out to our students and make sure that all our students are supported in ways and to support their mental health, and also to collaboratively reach out and work with other agencies as well in the community for the benefit of students. Our enrollment pupil services, special ed, we're at 214 students. We've got a few incoming students over the last couple weeks. It's expected we might have some additional enrollments associated with some of our therapeutic settings, such as positive alternatives. Transportation is busy, scheduling a lot of those routes, a handful of those outside of our boundaries associated with open enrollment. So I really want to give credit to Tom and the work he's doing. It's not an easy task to do that last moment, but it's a very important aspect to the service that we're providing as a district. And we're just continuing to reach out and find any student in need who might be in need of special ed services. And we'll continue to do that. You'll hear more from me a little bit later, so I'm going to wrap it up.
It's not much later, Brad.
That's right.
You're up next.
All right.
We'll put you on the spot right away.
Oh, okay.
To the podium.
All right. So let me pull mine up just so I don't have to wear my glasses here. Okay. Well, just do a quick report here.
Do you want to stand at the podium, please?
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Quick report here on something that's mandated that we do every year, which is associated with Act 25 and the seclusion and physical restraint law here in Wisconsin. Okay. So application of 125 applies to all students. So this is not separate and distinct groups. This is applies to both special education and general ed or regular education students. Some quick definitions here. Physical restraint is a restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a student to freely move her torso, arms, legs, or head. And seclusion, involuntary confinement of a student apart from other students in a room or area where the student is physically prevented from leaving. So the use of physical restraint and seclusion is should only be used when a student's behavior presents a clear, present, and imminent risk to the physical safety of the student or to others. So occasionally we do get some questions about this. Can staff intervene in a situation, a crisis situation, where there is about to be imminent danger to a student? Yes, they can. Do we want to use all strategies and, of course, prevent the use of physical restraint is only the very last step that we would take to ensure safety? Absolutely. But we do get that question a lot, and bottom line is, yes, we can reach out and protect students in times when there is an imminent threat of safety. So reporting requirements, why are we here? We're charged with having a designee, myself tonight, submitting the report on the number of incidents of seclusion and physical restraint for the previous year, total number of students involved, and the number of students with disabilities involved in the incident. So one of the things, or a couple of things that informs this, or why we look at this data, we want to evaluate always our behavioral interventions that are used in the district. We also want to just ensure that staff are trained, and if there are any patterns in the data, to look at what possibly we could do to inform training. We use nonviolent crisis prevention intervention for our training needs. And inform evaluation and discussion of training needs. I've said that a couple times. So here's our data from 2017-18. We've had 2 instances of seclusion, 6 of restraints, and 4 total students. All the students, just happens to be this year, are students with disabilities. These are also, it's not broken out here by grade level, but these are all just happen to be elementary students for this year. So training requirements. Here's a pretty comprehensive list here right from the Act itself. I won't read it, but I think the main component of this is in that crisis prevention training is really building staff awareness around the de-escalation cycle, their ability to respond in a crisis situation, appropriate training, and if needed, how do you physically restrain a student if it were needed, and then the process that ensues after that crisis or that high-level situation, documentation, communication to parent, processing your own thoughts and feelings, and communicating that as a group so we can better respond the next time. So we do use nonviolent crisis intervention. It is a nationally recognized training program on de-escalation. We have certified instructors. Josh Gould is an instructor for this, as well as Nina Hutton, our clubhouse director. So both of them have been through a multi-hour training, and we're using the trainer of trainer model, so they are refreshed on training periodically and keep credentials there. And focus, again, prevention, de-escalation, decision making in the course of behaviors, and more limitedly managing risk using disengagement and holding skills. That really, that de-escalation and all those pieces before that are the main portion of the training. So when were our staff trained? They were trained just a few days ago. We did a training on August 13th, and on August 16th we had a total of about 40 staff, 37 special ed staff. That's paraeducators, related service providers, teachers, and I know there were a couple counselors in there, and 3 gen ed staff as well. So 40 staff members trained. Let's see here. Let me go back one more. Did I miss anything here? And then we're going to do some instruction on making sure that everyone is familiar with reporting and documenting those restraint and seclusion. There's an associated form that we use in the district to do that. So considerations. I think always as pupil services and for all our staff, we're always looking at how we can better understand and implement accommodations for students who may need and are eligible for accommodations, whether it's behavioral or academic. Those can oftentimes, improve or prevent some of the incidences from the very beginning that might occur. Of course, we want to, associate this with our student engagement initiative, and that's just communicating with parent, getting ahead and being proactive as much as we can on students who may need some more intense behavior supports. Social emotional learning is an initiative that is really statewide. It is a focus on some of the practices where students are learning to be more self-aware. They're learning how to regulate their own behaviors in different environments and to become aware of when they're feeling like they're escalating, how they can better problem solve. And of course, school-based mental health services and partnerships, just talked a little bit about that in our update on trauma-sensitive schools. And finally, of course, a consideration would be to increase the number of staff. We've got a great core group that are learning these de-escalation strategies, that are CPI trained and certified. And our cooperating CISA, of course, has some trainings as well, so we're always looking to extend the potential of learning for others throughout the district. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Sounds like you jumped right in and molding it to how you find it okay, and obviously you're going to tweak some things, but the system has been working for us, has it? And you'll continue on. I see that it looks like you've got a good handle on what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question. For the 40 staff members that attended the formal training, is it possible that they can come and train then other staff members at the school without the other staff members going to get the formal training, or?
Yeah, CPI requires that you be a certified instructor in order to get the training. So certainly they can share knowledge and share strategies. They would not be officially certified.
Right, but I mean, as far as just training goes without certification, has that ever happened with our district?
No, we have 2 certified instructors, which is better than most districts do, because at CISA there are certified instructors and you can pay the fees and send people up to CISA and pay for subs, but it's great that we're able to have a couple of people. Gould was certified last year and trained quite a few staff members, and now Nina got the certification too. So having 2 certified trainers on staff is outstanding.
So they have been training other staff members?
Yes, they trained the 40 staff members.
Oh.
Josh and Nina did.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. All right. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
All right. And now we're on to our information items. Checked off number A. And so, Cheryl, are you up for the Montessori?
I am. Very excited to share information on our Montessori school. So I am going to talk to you about, it's informational this evening, but the whole purpose is to provide information to move forward with expanding our Montessori program. I have here tonight 3 teachers that are Montessori fabulous teachers, Lisa Hill and Gwen is missing tonight, but Lisa and Gwen started the Montessori program with Children's House, which was the 4KK program. And then we extended into lower elementary, which is Kathy Peters. Kathy, you want to wave? Kathy taught lower elementary first grade as the next step. And then the next step is Brenda Kronk, who is certified Montessori teacher for lower elementary second grade. And I'm going to explain more about that as we go through this short presentation. So Maria Montessori is the maker of our Montessori program. The program, she dates back to 1906, about over 100 years ago. She's an educator, she's a philosopher, and she was the brains behind the program in developing this philosophy of teaching children. Self-directed, purposeful activities, and the big word there is self-chosen pursuits for children in the classroom. So lots and lots of characteristics of Montessori, the Montessori method. And what I want to start out by saying is, by no means am I saying Montessori is a better method of instruction. It's a different method of instruction. We have great teachers. We have great programs. We have the Legacy program, which is more our traditional, and we have Montessori. They're both wonderful programs. I have to protect the Legacy too, because they sometimes feel like, oh, she only likes Montessori. That's not true. I love them both, but they both serve our children in different ways. So I don't want to read through all of this to you, but basically in the Montessori program, children get to choose their activities. They're presented lessons. It's a curriculum it's a developed curriculum through Maria Montessori. Teachers present lessons to the children. They may present them one-to-one. They may present them in a small group. Other children may be watching. If you haven't visited the Montessori program, I would encourage you to do so. Last year, we opened it up to families to come in during open house time, and I think they really got the sense of, wow, this does look different than a traditional learning environment. So, children learn respect and positive values. They learn to choose their own learning path, their journey. They work together as teams, and it's multi-age. So it's 4K. K to begin with was the Children's House. So they learn from one another. Any more that you want me to say about that? We'll move forward, and then I'll see if you have questions. So this, believe it or not, I have the documentation because of our wonderful Becky here. The official board minutes in February 16th of 2015 approved this growth plan. So I'm coming to you because we want to expand. As you can see, in 16-17, that's the bottom, we started with our Children's House. 4K and K, 2 classes. The next year we added the first grade, which was when we added Kathy Peters' class, and she's lower elementary. So over to the right here, my right, your right, we have the planes of development. I'm going to turn this so I can see this a little bit. Montessori is based on planes of development. So the Children's House is 4KK. In actual Montessori world is 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. But of course, we just had the 4KK. Lower elementary plane of development is 1 through 3rd grade. And then the upper elementary is 4th through 6th grade. So you can see we built by adding, when we visited several schools, everybody approached this differently. Some people just jumped right into a K-5 school. We decided to build upon it because we wanted the children that were in Montessori to grow and learn, and it gave us the opportunity to build the program with our staff too. So we are now at the 18-19 school year where we are adding the 2nd grade, and so we are starting the lower elementary multi-age piece. Next year would be the next phase where we would add, so a year from now, and I'm talking about it ahead of time because there's training that goes involved and that's involved, and there's money that's involved. The next phase would be where we would add our 3rd graders in the lower elementary. Okay? So we'll go to the next slide. And here's the teachers and I sat down and talked about a Montessori proposal for families and for the school board. And basically what we would like to do, because it's a little unique now because the way our district is set up, 3rd graders typically come over to the intermediate school. So what our proposed plan is, in September, the families will get a letter. We're going to target our 2nd grade families. They will get a letter providing information about the expansion to 3rd grade. In October, and letting them know that at parent-teacher conferences, we're going to discuss it more with them. In October, we would discuss with families their option of keeping their 2nd grader at Leon in the Montessori program or moving them on to 3rd grade at the intermediate school. In November, we are going to schedule a parental information session about the expansion of the 3rd grade Montessori program. And then in January is when we would ask families to give their commitment as to whether or not, if they're going to stick with Montessori. So that is our proposed plan at this point in time. If you talk to our teachers that have worked with these families, the families are saying, and this is what I'm hearing from you guys, they want to know what is going to go, what's happening with Montessori. Is it going to continue to grow? And our recommendation, of course, is yes, that it does continue to grow. But of course, we have to have families that want it too. So the next slide shows you, and you probably remember this from the school perceptions data, but when they did that survey 2 years ago, the Montessori program was very well perceived. And that silly computer stopped on you, didn't it?
It just does that sometimes.
I know. Becky was warning me of that. So the school perceptions data, what it did is it surveyed our Montessori program, and it was just wonderful results. I'd like you to see them.
We have them on here.
You do have them? Okay. So you can see that they were, we were rated like 4 point some out of 5. So 5 being the highest, you can see that our program received very high ratings, which made us feel really happy, especially the teachers that committed to the training and the hours of preparation. So the next slide then is going to show you what the cost of expansion is to the 3rd grade. And this is if we have a whole new classroom. And it would be a 1 through 3rd then. We'd have 3 1 through 3rd lower elementary Montessori classrooms. And basically this is the training estimate. And for our lower elementary, it's 9 months, 4 hours. It's all written out there for you. But the bottom line is the cost of training and the payment is $6,950. The summer curriculum work, we give them summer curriculum work because it's an amazing amount of time. I think Brenda Kronk has been at school this summer more than I have, and I'm there a lot. So she's just been there a lot preparing for her classroom. So we pay her to be there. We allowed 40 hours. And then the classroom resources, we've budgeted $25,000 for each classroom that we have opened. So the total class with the lower elementary training, the summer curriculum, and the classroom resources is about $33,000. So the next slide, I guess the next slide is questions.
So the 3rd grade is going to be at the elementary, or it'll be here at the intermediate?
It would be at the elementary, and the reason being is that plane of development. Montessori, lower elementary doesn't go 1st, 2nd, and then move 3rd grade over. Now, mind you, it could be, we have 20 kids in each class. So 20 1st graders, 22nd, it would be 23rd if all of the 3rd graders stayed. Approximately 20.
Yeah. And you're following the sequence, so basically those in 2nd or 1st, 2nd would be the ones going into 3rd?
Yes. We have had a waiting list at every grade level. So our biggest waiting list, of course, is at the 4K level. This year we could have had a brand new children's house easy. We had 15 4K children on the waiting list, and we could only put 10 in there. It's getting even more popular with open enrollment people. We are getting calls from the outside wanting the program, and that's a little controversial because, we want to increase enrollment, but at the same time we want to service the needs of our own community. But it is appealing to open enrollment folks. So when you say is 3rd grade, is it going to impact 30? Well, if we got all 20, it would be 20, right? Yeah. Yes, 10 per room, about 20. It would be 20 kids out of about 100. I think my current 2nd grade right now is the lowest grade, about 104. Mm-hmm. So. And do you ever enter the kids without, say... We do. We do. So if there's an opening, can you guys help me with that? So, Kathy, your 1st grade, did you take in did we have any openings in your room this year? We had 4 openings.
4 last year. This year, I think there are, that would be a 2nd grader. I think there's 1 or 2 from 2nd grade that are from Legacy coming in.
Okay. So move-aways, most, the families really like the program. They like what they see.
Yeah.
So you've had students move from the traditional classroom level into the Montessori? at
Yes,
any stage?
we have.
Yeah,
We have.
okay.
Not a lot because we don't have a lot of openings. It's kind of like, we have these great programs. AIM is like that. Project-based learning in my building's like that. You only can open it to so many people.
Yep.
Mr. Kukta said, Cheryl, should we have the whole building be Montessori? No, not quite, but because the other programs are beautiful too. Like I said, they are all great.
Some of the beauty of it is that we do have the choice. We have
Right.
multi-age project-based learning with Mrs. Kennedy in the elementary. We have the Legacy and the Montessori, and then, of course, AIM project-based learning. So all these choice programs, it's a credit to our teachers and our administration for going in with the board support. I do want to emphasize that it is a multi-age, so the plane of development that the third graders are in are with an equal number of second graders in the same classroom.
And first graders. It will be
And
first, second, and third.
Thank you.
So there'd be a classroom with first, second, and third grade kids.
Because we're growing into that. So we started with just first, then we added second, and now it's this next year would be third grade. And the families that are in it love it.
Yeah, the families and kids seem to.
They love it.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Should I put Mr. Derfler on the spot? He's got children in the Montessori program. Be nice. No.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no secret, I live in Osceola. We have 3 children, and every single morning, we load them all up, and Dad drives to school and drops off the 3, not in Osceola, but in Amery, for a reason, because of what we do here in Amery, in Montessori and in Legacy. It's a no-brainer choice for us. We'll have it that way as long as our kids are school age, they'll be here.
Yeah, I'm a
So-
multi-age learner too. I went to Deer Park.
But you know what?
3 classrooms.
It's
2 grade levels
amazing
in
what
one.
you learn from your peers. It's amazing.
You could have gone a whole different direction there, Keith. I'm just
I
saying.
know. I had to slip it in though on you.
So
Yeah.
my question is, I know that people are already talking about wondering if it's going to go into 4th grade, and I'm wondering if parents would feel like that would affect their decision about 3rd grade as to whether or not there's going to be
I know.
next plane of development, and I don't know when that question.
We're a society that just
question.
wants those answers right away. We are trying to do it very intentional and very, we're letting our families drive the program. Let's just say next year we have 5 third graders that want to stay back. We want to serve those third graders because we believe in it that much. And yep, the next plane of development would be 4, 5, 6. That really wasn't in that chart that we drew up, back in 2000. What did I say it was? 15. But I would love to see it go all the way through. I really would, and I think families would. But
So are you?
the proof is in the pudding.
You'll wait until next year to try to see if families are interested in that and continuing into the next plane of development?
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're getting prepared for the next grade. Mm-hmm. So we are always 1 year ahead, and so what my task will be, we put this on as informational tonight, but what my task will be once it's approved is to find a teacher willing to commit to it. And I've been so fortunate because I've had experienced teachers that have done it, so they understand Legacy, and then they get trained in Montessori. We've just had a win-win situation here in Amery. And so that would be what my hope would be, is that I can, it was a big sell back when Lisa and Gwen did it. And now I think people are seeing, wow, this really is a true program, and it's awesome, and kids love it, and teachers love it. You guys, they can't say enough about it, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but they love it. So,
But you would wait until January until you have families commit so that
Right.
you know if you needed that.
well,
or if you would.
as soon as you guys approve it, I will start working on my staff, because the training, Brenda, you just finished. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I don't remember how long it was, I just kept plugging away at it, but you have a designated amount You can get an extension. I did it during the school year, and it was doable.
I think that one slide says how many hours that they plan out. It's a 9-month training.
So, but I guess my question is, how you wouldn't know until you have families commit whether or not you need that third classroom next year, or whether you're going to just do 2 classrooms with the first through third. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I need to move forward with talking about it and getting a teacher. And I think it's realistic to train a teacher beginning in January, but I do believe that
already have somebody lined up.
we'll need to have somebody lined up.
So if I remember correctly, right, part of the benefit of the Montessori school is to help encourage kids to open enroll in Amery.
It was one of the things that we talked about.
So do you have an idea of how many kids this may have brought in? Does it change by a moving target?
Do you guys know the exact number? It's brought in. Yes, it has. And again, like I said earlier, it's kind of a double-edged sword because we do a lottery. It's lottery done, but then we do look at the heterogeneous mix. So some of our open enrollment folks don't make that lottery. I know that at one point the board had talked about, do we set aside slots for open enrollment? We haven't really entertained that. That's a tough conversation.
Yeah, okay.
But yes, we do have them. I'll get that number for you.
I was just curious.
So are you coming back at a future board meeting for an action on this, or are we looking to take it
next month?
Okay.
Okay. And if you have any questions, just give me a holler, or these wonderful ladies in the back can help me answer questions too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Next up, the board retreat, setting a date and time.
Well, in the past, we've done a board retreat in October. We have a board retreat work session scheduled. I guess this is as partly informational and announcement that there is a board retreat scheduled with a WASB, Wisconsin Association of School Board attorney presenter, Bob Butler, coming on August 30th, and that date's been established and set. We can talk about a future fall board retreat if the board so chooses.
Okay. And then next up, legislative update.
I have a legislative update and an email that I received from Dan Rossmiller, the WASB lobbyist, and he talked about the Blue Ribbon Commission and that they have met. And he mentioned in this email the members of the commission will be meeting individually with the co-chairs and staff of the Nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau in the near future. At those meetings, the commission members will present their recommendations, and he went on to say ultimately these individual recommendations will be compiled and presented to the full commission. And it's become a political issue because do you move forward with discussion and recommendations on a new financial public school finance system in Wisconsin prior to the midterm elections, prior to the gubernatorial election in November? That's what a certain party does not want to have happen. However, the other party, including, well, I shouldn't say party because Luther Olson, who heads the commission, it is with that first party I mentioned, and he's very much in favor of seeing this discussion happen now, soon. And so they're making some headway in this Blue Ribbon Commission to investigate other finance options for public schools in Wisconsin. We'll see where that goes.
I think they've been talking about that for a while.
Yep. Past several months and
years.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, years. School finance.
Yeah, that's
just that nothing's changed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll move on to our action items. You want to do the personnel?
Yeah, we could do personnel action. We have the following a resignation and rehire of a new position by Carrie Shu. She is being offered the position as reading specialist, Title I teacher this year for 1 year, and therefore is resigning from second grade. We'll need to find grade 2 teacher before teachers start tomorrow.
I'm still hiring.
Yeah.
Then we have Ashley File, an assistant 8th grade volleyball coach, Mary Ziegler, clubhouse aide, Heidi Bloomer, and Lene Seaman, both van drivers, and Todd Christensen, a Skills USA co-advisor, to join Josh Ganji as a Skills USA co-advisor.
Okay. Is there a motion for the?
Yes, I make a motion to accept the resignations and the new employee contracts.
And a second?
Second.
Seconds are made. Is there any more discussion? Then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And negative, no. Motion carried. Now we've got a resolution for borrowing.
Okay, the board did pass a motion. However, the lending institution requested a resolution, and so this is a resolution on this date as stated. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, School District of Amery be authorized to borrow $355,000 and establish membership savings account. Be it further resolved, the representatives goes on to say to execute necessary documents for that lending option. It is at 4%, and it names myself as district administrator and Mr. Deeb as business manager to be the school district representatives to sign papers and so forth. And so if the board passes this motion for the resolution, it is resolution 2018-08, the 8 being for August. I appreciate Mr. Deeb working with Wisconsin Credit Union, and there were questions last week regarding in-depth discussion about potential conflict of interest. I did send the letter forward from Wisconsin Credit Union and also consulted with WASB legal counsel, and they both said that there is no conflict of interest in this type of a borrowing, since there is no board member or for Wisconsin Credit Union, and they both concurred that it's not a matter of conflict of interest, so the board can take action.
So I make a motion to accept resolution 2018-08.
Is there a second? Dale?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Extra discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, any other discussion on this?
Yes.
Okay.
This was the $355,000 that we had talked about it last month, correct? So I just had a question of the $80,000 then grant. How would that fit in? Can we apply that right away? Do we have to take the whole $355,000 then? Can't we take the $80,000 off, or how does that work?
Yeah, there was discussion about it, and so the board would have the option to pay back, to use less funds, or to leave it open. Of course, the school will only use the amount that they borrow. $355,000 was the full amount for the cameras. It would leave some flexibility, and I would report back to the board of all of the expenditures. So if there are other things that could be considered that it could be used for, if you remember the presentation from Josh.
Strike.
Thank you. There was a lot more in safety and security and cameras beyond what just the cameras that was being purchased. But yes, the $80,000, that dollar safety grant the district is receiving, that was committed, will take care of a portion of this. There's a secondary, I'll just mention too, there's another portion of grant funding. There's still $45 million available, and we're applying for that second portion, which is, the application is due next week. Headed up by a committee Mr. Gould is leading, with Mr. Derfler, Mr. Baumgartner, Mr. Deeb, and myself. So we're writing that secondary grant, which may be a substantial amount, almost as much as that first grant was. So we're always seeking additional funding for projects.
So do you want to, are you
Are
thinking
you
about?
asking me if I want to amend a motion here?
Yeah,
The
I guess so.
resolution,
If you
or-
are looking to put that
can deny this one,
80,000, I'm just wondering if you want to, if you amend it, or do we pass this first and then just designate that 80 to pay that off? I
Yeah,
don't know that,
we
because
can-
we've already committed to paperwork to borrow the 355.
Well, that's what, I guess that was my question.
Yeah,
is-
and so from there, Andrew, then we would, if we want that 80,000 to go in, we'll pass this motion, resolution, and then make another motion to apply that 80,000.
Do we know
to
when the
that number.
80,000 is coming, by the way? I mean, we don't have that in our hands yet, right?
It has to be spent before it's, and one of the stipulations of a grant is that it typically cannot supplant other funds. So if we dedicate funds for something specifically, then you typically can't use it to supplant. In other words, pay for something that you already are dedicated, you've already dedicated funds to pay for. So we just have to be careful in when we order and what we order and how we're doing it, because we wrote very specific things. For instance, I believe there were 9 cameras per building for 4 buildings and servers that were put into the grant. And we have a total of 142 cameras in the plan, in the safety plan to implement. So if we get that amount again, it'll pay for 9 more cameras per building.
So that's,
Yeah, so we don't know what those numbers will end up being, but it would be great to be able to pay off a substantial portion of that.
Yeah, and just a couple things. I know the first round of purchases have been made for that, and there, on the other side note, there isn't any penalty for early payoff of the loan. So I know that taking out initially with interest, obviously that's a cost, but there really is not a cost for paying it off early, which is important to know too. So
That's what I asked last month. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we can take that 80,000 and then apply it to this without.
yeah,
It can be paid off early, yes, with no penalty.
So basically, it's an option to take the 80,000 and buy the equipment, and then the 80,000 that we borrow, we just turn around and send it back to them.
If that's what the board chooses to
That,
do.
you know, I'm just trying to say legally,
that-
what we're trying to do here is legal and right, because we did take the grant then, and we did purchase equipment with it. And then when the loan comes in, we just turn around, and if we hold it for a period, a small time until the grant is in.
Yes, that's
and
an
then like
option.
grants, it can be used. You may find something else you want to use it towards. You know, it's just it's open that way compared to a grant. So
Yep.
very. And you have to use it in certain things that it stipulates. So
That was the question, is if
Okay.
that was an option to do that with grant money. So, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? So the motion is to accept Resolution 2018-08 for the borrowing of the money. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say no. Motion's carried. All right. And now we'll go to the policy second reading. And Shar, what I'm thinking here is what you're thinking, you know, because it's not on the agenda, we really can't designate that grant money. But if
That is
we want-
correct. I
but
just
if we
had
wanna do
questions.
that
Otherwise,
next
we would
month,
have,
we can put it
otherwise
on
it
the-
would have changed my vote, yes.
Yep, okay, thank you. So, policies, this is the second reading now for the non-discrimination guidelines related to students who are transgender and students non-conforming to gender role stereotypes. And thank you, Becky, for a hard copy. Do we want a discussion before a motion, or do you want to make a motion and discuss?
I think, Erin, you had some questions,
Yes,
right?
I tried to watch the video since I was
Yep.
gone last month, and I wasn't able to hear any of the discussion. So I guess I'm wondering what the discussion included, or what you kind of covered last month. So
not
that I
sh-
don't,
yeah.
I don't know, I guess repeat questions or.
Yep.
No, please repeat questions.
We're out with
Because
that.
it's one of those things that my head's spinning from all of this. Yeah, Any of you?
Yeah, we did have a lot of, oh, go ahead, Dale, I'm sorry, did I cut you off there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember necessarily specifically. I know Sean offered some comments, I think, on
The high school.
inside of the high school.
Yep,
I don't, do we have, well, we could have maybe similar situations at the middle school,
Well,
maybe?
we have another situation at the high school. We have 2 students that identify themselves as transgender. A student
Okay.
just arrived here in the last week.
And I mean, could it happen at the elementary school and intermediate
yeah.
school too? So
Sure.
we just don't have that situation right now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And then from what I could read, it encompasses all students.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
So it
not
should
just-
cover everybody. I mean, that would be my thoughts, that it would
Yeah.
cover everybody.
Yeah.
Yep, I think we just talked about having that dress out facility available for students who choose to do athletics or choose to participate in physical education program at the high school level, that we do have a facility available for them to be able to dress out, change clothes, do what they need to do, and then be able to go back and then change into their street clothes for the rest of the day. We do
And do
have
we
that
have that facility available?
in every school.
I met with Mr. Rose and Mr. Gould today on that very topic, and yes, we have a plan for that, for a student that wishes to be in athletics and also in Phi Ed.
Okay.
Yep, and we do have those facilities available at every school level, so which would be the nurse's office in every school level. And those were kind of the major questions that we had last month that were covered. Other than that, it looked like the policy that we had and that we read was encompassing and sensitive.
And maybe as far as sports go, at the high school level or middle school and high school, where the WIA we're going to basically follow their...
Yep, the WIA weighs in on that, and there is very recent language that they've provided, because this is new to them as well, within the last, call it 2 years, 3 years at the most, that Mr. Gould is following, and he's been in conversation with them about how to proceed correctly.
Okay.
And that is in section
Yeah.
5 there, so
Section
participation
5.
in
Yep.
physical ed
Yeah,
classes
saw
and sports
that.
activities, that it does refer to the WIAA on those fronts. So I thought it was the policy was well written, sensitive, encompassing.
Yeah.
So one of my questions was in section 3, in the second paragraph, it says, when referring to students at school and in connection with school activities, school personnel will normally use the student's legal name and the pronouns that correspond to the student's biological sex assigned at birth. However, an adult student or the parent guardian of a minor student may determine the name and gender pronouns that school employees will use to address the student at school and in connection with school-related activities. Court-ordered name change or medical treatment or medical procedure is not required to initiate such a request. So my 2 questions were, 1, if you do not have an adult student, do you need the parent or guardian of a minor student in order to initiate that request and for that request to be approved? Does that make sense?
It does.
You know, I'm wondering about that. And then, yeah, I guess we can talk about that question first. And then I
What
guess-
we did at the high school last year is we waited for the actual name change to occur. Then we could change that name in Power School, and then wherever it appears in Power School, if you're putting the seating chart on the big screen in front for groups, that name appears in the most accurate and updated way. In the pronouns, people slip, I slip, he, she. I mean, that happens. The student was very gracious about people slipping up. It went really, really well. And this wasn't me thinking it went really well. The students said so, and their mom said so as well. So it was a pretty big success. We met with the other family of the other student late last week. I did, with guidance, and we're seeking to have the same success as we did the first time around, following the policy that exists. And the 2 big sticking points are obviously athletics and bathrooming, because that's just going to be an issue. I mean, I think a lot of policies struggle with how to proceed with that.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
very aware of trying to be incredibly sensitive to the way in which these individuals want to be identified.
Now, were those name changes legal or just
Legal.
requested?
The first one was legal. The other has not made a name change in any way.
Yeah.
But the first one was absolutely legal, and they brought in the paperwork, and we made the change in Power School,
Yeah,
and it's
because
done.
I was reading that too,
Yep.
where you
So-
basically can't change it until it becomes a legal
That's what
process.
we
Well,
did.
this one says that you don't.
Well, but
required.
he's
parent.
talking about Power School and everything.
Right.
And transcripts and that.
Right.
Those names, that name can't be changed unless it's a legal document.
We changed the name in formal communication with that
Yeah.
student and changed the pronouns immediately.
Yeah.
But from a formal standpoint of a Power School, we waited for the legal change. And that process was fairly slow. That conversation was initiated in August, and I think the name change finally became real in February or March. I'm sure that bureaucracy of that is slow-moving.
Yep.
So we just waited, and they were very patient, and we exercised patience on our end with the paperwork process, and it all worked out.
So, so back to, just the idea of if a minor student comes in and wants that change, would they need parent guardian?
I'm not going to enter into a name change with a minor student without
right.
working with
Yep.
parents on that. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And in some cases, we had a student who's no longer with us. One parent said, sure, absolutely, and the other parent said, no way. So I'm just not going to do that. That's a really big change to make without parents being involved.
Yes.
So we involved
So
them.
if a student asks, we would say,
I wouldn't
would
tell
say
them no. I'd say that's a conversation
You'd
that
say-
we need to have. We have guidance that's involved in that. The parents need to be involved in that. So I understand you feel the need to be able to do this, but let's work the system and go through the process and see where we stand. And people are, pretty patient about that and pretty understanding when you lay it out like that.
When do you think if that's sincerely what they're identifying,
Sure.
that they understand the process that has to go through? And,
Absolutely.
Right. Otherwise, you're going to have 10 kids that come in and want to be called, whatever.
Sure. In my mind, my value judgments about it mean nothing. I'm just going to follow the law and the policy that exists. How I feel about it matters very little.
So, like, in section 4, it talks about restroom and locker room accessibility, and specifies that a student who is transgender and has held the belief deeply, followed the belief consistently over a period of time, is supported by the student's parent or guardian, and for which the student has sought guidance or counseling in coming to the decision, will be permitted to access the segregated restrooms that correspond to the gender identity that the student consistently asserts at school and elsewhere. So, I appreciate that it says generally, but then it also says in the next paragraph, the request shall be assessed on a case-by-case basis. So I guess I just want to make sure that there's not inconsistencies between generally and case-by-case. I think that it makes sense. That was something that kind of stuck out to me. My other question, I guess, is if a parent comes in and wants to change the name and pronouns of a child, especially maybe a younger child, would counseling be involved in that? Because here, it's for restroom and locker room accessibility, it sounds like the counseling needs to be involved. I'm also wondering if counseling should also be involved just in having a name change and pronouns changed. Does that make sense?
I can't speak to the younger kids. You would have to ask
Well,
these
I think it's
folks.
across the board, but I guess I would like to see counseling be involved before name and pronoun change.
And we had at the high school to work more with the staff to help them understand what was going on more than with the family. Truthfully.
Right. The
'Cause
family
they
lives
were,
it
they
every
were
day.
like, what's going on? They didn't really care, but
Right.
what's going on with the Power School name says and this, and they were, we just, okay, this is what's happening. But in regards to counseling, there wasn't any necessary for the student from last year. Maybe there will be this time around, but it was a pretty nice, easy transition ultimately.
So I don't know if there's something should be
Are you
added
talking
there.
Are you talking like mandatory? Or are you asking should we make that mandatory counseling then before you?
Well, if we should include that in the wording that before a student's name and pronoun is changed, in the school that at least a school counselor is involved.
I don't know. That's kind of a slippery slope. I don't think.
I would be very
required.
uncomfortable
No,
with mandating that a student receive counseling.
Yeah.
That would be a personal choice.
Yeah,
You could
can't.
offer
No.
it, but
Yeah, we would certainly offer the meetings with the administration and the counselors and the parents and having the discussion about that. But see, counseling can mean, what does that mean? You know, we're seeking outside professional counseling or like that. I don't think we can necessarily mandate at all. But
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But like just meeting with someone to talk that through, I guess, before they make that choice.
Yeah.
You hear different things across the nation where, I've heard of parents who are making that decision for young children, and it's like, I would like them to have talked through that with someone before they try to make
No, we
those
can't
They're
make
still
that
the legal,
mandatory. Right.
they're the
We
parent and the
can't.
guardian. There's not much
Right.
you
That's-
can do there.
yeah, you can't take it
I
right
mean,
away.
Good thoughts, so I like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, I would
mean,
not do that. No.
Yeah. I'm in that same section, and I don't know how to articulate this the best, but, I circled, the privacy and safety of all students, and in this policy, it doesn't really encompass the other students that are affected by this transgender. Is what if they feel uncomfortable? How do we deal with those situations where, the transgender and that, and then, as far as in physical ed class, in other areas where that happens, they're minors, so then are we, how are the parents going to react, when their student comes home and talks about this, and they feel uncomfortable, and I don't know the ansher there. I'm
Well,
just
we're not
saying.
mixing locker rooms, right? I mean,
No.
that's not the idea here. So,
No,
well,
but then,
it does say,
one of the other students says, gee, I'm uncomfortable and I want a separate area too, how do we deal with that? It's not in here, and I'm not saying it there's no way to cover everything that we need to cover. I'm just said, it just jumped up at me and said, what
Right.
happens, yeah.
And just changing locker rooms isn't anything that's really new. I have every year some specific sixth graders maybe that come in that are uncomfortable with the general locker room
Yep.
of their own sex, and they say, you know what, I prefer to change in the nurse's office, and we've always worked with them on that.
Okay.
So that's something that we've been doing for a long time. I have 2 or 3 different areas where this could happen, depending in my building. So I'm not too concerned about that. And this is not, I haven't received this type of request from this, at the middle school level
Yeah.
yet. But like you said, I'm anticipating that may happen down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think what we need to keep in mind is that this is a transgender policy to apply to the students that identify themselves as transgender, not as a general student policy. And I think the school district has always been very accommodating of individual students' needs based on their mental well-being and their physical well-being, that this policy couldn't encompass every child, but it does encompass just those people who identify as transgender. So
I mean, in a whole, it is a good document. I'm just throwing things out because I was just reading through it again and again and trying to, get my head around
yeah,
it.
I think that's what we need to, and this is more of legal, what we need to do legally to accommodate those students, and not, and like Sean said, whatever other things enter into that is not for us to decide. So
Well,
we're just policy only.
Yeah, and the proof is this policy's been in place in a school district for a number of years, my understanding, so that's, kind of proof that it is working down there, or
We're
where.
just having a situation come up. Don't know.
Yeah.
But it does say in section 4 that part where I've kind of read before, generally, a student who is transgender will be permitted to access the segregated restrooms that correspond to the gender identity that the student consistently asserts. So we're saying generally they will be allowed to use the restrooms that correspond to what they're asserting. So it doesn't. Yeah.
But that's legal. I mean, that's, that's kind of the law that we're following. I
Currently,
mean, I
that
don't think we're in charge.
that's also in compliance with Title IX.
Right. I think that's where I was going with that.
We would
yes.
be in violation if
Yes.
we did it any differently. This is being litigated in district and federal courts both ways.
In the
My
student
whole-
we made reference to from last year, they're just using a neutral setting altogether.
That is
They're not
correct.
in either.
Yeah.
So there's not an issue at all,
That is
by
correct.
their choice, not because you
That's
must
this
do
case,
this.
again.
Right.
Yes, this new
Yeah.
case, we're still working through that process.
Yeah.
It's not.
We can't violate any other laws that are more, we can't. It has to be the way it is.
Helen, what are your wishes?
I'd like to adopt the policy. Is there any other discussion? If not, I'd make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion is made and seconded to adopt the policy for transgender. Any further discussion? Then the vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. We've adopted the policy. Good discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
good questions.
Yeah. Now, we did our personnel. Do we need to go into closed session? So we do not need to do that. And so we can move to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion is made. Seconded. Any more discussion? Nope. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Negative, no. We're adjourned. Thank you.